Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Murillo, President and CEO of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us here on this television program. We're so honored to have an extraordinary Houstonian entrepreneur, author, so many more titles, but you're going to get to hear more about him and the extraordinary mark he's left in this great community with the many great initiatives and just innovative ideas that he's just come up with to make Houston the great place that it is. We have none other than Robert T. Sackwitz. He's president and CEO of Hazak Corporation, business and marketing consultancy, and you'll see why. Mr. Sackwitz, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
I get to interview a lot of phenomenal people, but I must say that this is very exciting for me because I remember Sackwitz.
Oh, thank you.
I remember going with my mother and us dressing up as much as we could at the time to show up to go there because it was an experience. And
well,
you created
that's nice
that.
Of you to say that.
It is a big memory in my mind, and I'm sure for many, many people.
Well, stores at that time, and even today, if they do and if they can, really had what I call the 4 E's. Their role was to edit for their customers all the huge numbers of collections that existed. It was to educate on what makes for quality and why something costs what it costs, and to really have them understand what is so good. It was to entertain, as we did with our festivals every year, with theme-oriented festivals, and with our ultimate gifts and the catalogs that we did. And with those three things, you could create the fourth E, which is excitement. And even today, online, for instance, just as with catalogs, there are three things that cannot be achieved other than in a physical brick and mortar location. There's fit, there's fabric, and there's color. All three of those things are not absolutely pixelation accurate, which is why when you go to a FedEx or a UPS store today or the US Mail, you'll see a line of people rather than just go straight up to the counter. Because women are returning the other two sizes that they bought when they ordered online. They'll order 2 or 3 just to make sure something fits and to make sure that the fabric is what they thought it was.
Yes.
And the color is accurate.
Yes.
And that's not true today. So just a plug for whether or not brick and mortar will continue. People are constantly asking me about, the Neiman Marcus Saks Fifth Avenue. Are they bankrupt? Do they go out of business? And my point is, no, they're restructuring because you can't burden that much debt onto these companies, which Wall Street tries to play this game with.
Yeah. So on that note, you've brought so much to Texas and to this country. Tell us how you go about identifying these opportunities. I mean, in your mind, you must be constantly thinking and just putting 2 and 2 together and coming up with these new ideas constantly.
Well, our late promotion director after a while was Betsy Parrish, and she would say, Robert, your problem is you're always too early with something, which is true. When we brought Yves Saint Laurent to the United States first, Courrèges first, we lost money for the first 2 or 3 seasons until people really understood the news of who it was. Women's Wear Daily would write about it, and they would understand it. But it was part of a strategy, because when my grandfather and great uncle started this little gentleman's haberdashery in Galveston in 1902, for 27 years it was only a men's and boys shop. And finally, in 1929, they added women's, but Neiman Marcus, for instance, had started in women's. We started in men's. So they had exclusivities on these New York designers, and we couldn't get them to become really well known for fashion. And in the mid-60s, when European couture designers, led by André Courrèges, who wanted to launch Couture Future, the ready-to-wear that's made in his own atelier. Space City, USA would be the great place to launch it. I flew over there. I gave him the actual two dresses that were sizes for specifications, because European ladies' specifications on their bodies are different.
Yes.
And took them to him, and he then modificato, did a little design change, a little specification change, and it was extremely successful because of that. But my thought was, take these European, well-known in Europe, but not in America, but Women's Wear and Vogue and Harper's Bazaar were beginning to talk about this ready-to-wear now instead of just custom-made couture. And that brought us up to the level where people would talk about us in the same terms as Neiman Marcus, Saks Fifth Avenue, Bergdorf Goodman, as the top fashion leaders. And Houston was becoming such an international city by comparison, which we were trying to also encourage. But because of its businesses, it was doing extremely well. And of course, oil and gas up until the mid-'80s was well over 80% of our economy. So that's an international business.
Sure.
And so many people were coming from there.
And when you look at Houston today, you have to go back and think, Sakowitz started this Houston being an international city.
To a large degree.
You really did.
Yeah.
Because people didn't talk about it back then, right? But you saw that vision before it was a reality almost.
When we started the first fine and rare wine department in the United States, with all due respect to the great businesses that they are today, Specs and Total, they didn't have first, second, and third growth Bordeaux's, a big selection of them at the time, if any. And so we launched that with the Sakowitz Wine Auction and the Sakowitz Wine Department in 1967 or 8. Flew Michael Broadbent, who was the cellar master of Christie's auction house in London, and for 26 years he brought those, he did our auctions for us. And people in Houston who have great cellars will tell you they got some of their first wines from the Sakowitz auction.
Yeah. So you've documented some of that history. Tell us about the books.
So the book, this big little fella here, is called More Than a Store, 3 Decades of Tumultuous Changes, 1960 to 1990. And those are actually my mature years of retail, running the business, launching a lot of these things, creating them. And it goes into all of the cultural changes, political changes, launching European design, starting business in India, China. I mean, literally, I was in Hong Kong having things made private label for 2 years before Nixon and Kissinger, and then was in Shanghai 8 months after that to launch some of the first Chinese supply chain things that are being talked about even today, creating that supply chain concept. And the book covers that. It covers Houston's growth. It covers how Jesse Jones basically made this deal for my grandfather so that he could expand into the Gulf building. My father and I sat on the corner of Post Oak and Westheimer in 1957 and counted the cars. We knew 610 was being built, but it was a cow pasture. There was nothing. When you go look at uptown Houston, the Galleria area, none of that was there. Our sophisticated marketing study was counting cars, and knew enough traffic was there. We opened that Post Oak store in '59, and it was extremely successful. People all thought the family was going to go bankrupt. But Houston was growing so fast, we knew that. And then after that, Town and Country Village, because Town and Country was out in Memorial was growing so fast. We then had a store in Champions, and NASA. So we actually had, at the high point, we had 6 stores in Houston. We had one in Midland, one in Amarillo, one in Tulsa, one in Scottsdale, Arizona. And this Christmas catalog went to 1.5 million people all over the United States. It was on Johnny Carson at night, the Tonight Show, Good Morning America, Today Show. We were interviewed. I was on television every Christmas.
Again, way ahead of your time on this. Absolutely, from a marketing standpoint. So now, as you look back at those years, I mean, there has to be a huge appreciation for your forward thinking. I mean, even if you thought it then, but really, I mean, when you look at the supply chain complexities back then compared to now, you get on a phone and you hit a button and stuff arrives. That was
Everything
not there.
Didn't exist.
That's right. There was no internet. There was nothing like looking at it from. You had to pick up and go and scout and sort.
Convince people that Houston, Texas was also the place for their product in many cases.
Which was a real hard sell.
Which at that time was not a given.
Oh my goodness.
So it's really interesting to look back. But when I look out over the city, because I live in a condo now, and when I look out over the city, I look at the areas that weren't even there when I was, 10 or 12 or 20 years old even. And I just have such extraordinary pride in what this city has become. And the diversity, there's so many stories. I was one of the founding members of the board of something called the Jefferson Awards for Public Service.
I remember the Jefferson Awards.
That's right. For 50 some odd years I was
I
on
remember.
That board. Well, we gave an award, a Jefferson Award for the greatest public service by an elected or appointed official. And one year it was Mayor Daley Jr., and he was bragging about how Chicago was such an incredibly diverse city. And I said, well, with all due respect, Mr. Mayor, because since I was on the board, I was at the luncheon meeting with him. And I said, with all due respect, Mr. Mayor, Houston is 44% Hispanic, and that's not Mexico. That's Mexico, Central America, South America, Spain. It's a huge complexity. It's 22% Black, and that's not just Southern American. That is Africa, that's the Caribbean. It is about 12% or 14% Asian and Middle Eastern, and we're talking the entire diversity of Asia, and the rest are Caucasian. As I understand it, Chicago has lots of people from Poland, Czechoslovakia, when it existed, Russia, England, France, Italy, most of all Eastern and Western Europe. Isn't that correct? He said, yes. I said, so which of us is the most diverse? And he said, Robert, I'm going to have to think about that.
Well, and there's no thinking about it. Clearly, that is one of the selling points of Houston, is its diversity, is great history. The history of your family, the history that you've put in a book so that we can forever remember.
Much of which, as I say in the very beginning, is written for my 4 children, because so much of it happened before they were born or old enough to understand it.
Yeah.
And of course, people say, well, why isn't it still around today? Well, as I said, Houston was over 80% oil and gas oriented. And in 1985, the price of oil dropped over the course of a year from 83 to 85, 2 years, 84% to $8 a barrel. All of our banks were wiped out. I was sitting as chairman of the Houston branch of the Federal Reserve, and so I was getting these calls about non-performing loans from all these banks. And they literally, we lost, with the exception of Frost Bank, we lost every local or statewide bank. Had to restructure everything. And so we reorganized under bankruptcy, much the same as Neiman's and Sachs are doing now. Found an Australian partner, restarted. We were returned to our roots kind of in Houston instead of all those oil-oriented cities that we were in that I mentioned.
Yeah.
And it was a really great restart, but Wall Street had something called the flash crash at the end of the 80s. And there's an old saying that when Wall Street sneezes, the rest of the world catches pneumonia. Australia's interest rate doubled, and my partner got wiped out. And that then, what am I going to do? I literally lost 90% of my net worth, had to start all over again, and started a consulting practice. It's multi-industry, multinational, and helping all kinds of different companies, starting in retail, then real estate, then oil and gas, all kinds of different technologies and stuff, which is fascinating and exciting.
Well, you are fascinating and exciting, and we are so thankful that you're joining us here today on our program. Thank you so much for all you've done for this region, and absolutely setting this landscape of Houston being an international city.
And thank you for what you do.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Well, on behalf of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, we thank you for joining us, and we hope you'll see us very soon on our next show. Thanks a lot. The Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce is the leading advocate for the Hispanic business community. In Houston, we represent over $54 billion per year in consumer spending. Our thanks to our board and staff for making sure we elevate business and advocate for a stronger economy. Hello, I'm Dr. Laura Murillo, President and CEO of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. We're very happy to have you here on our television program. We love to feature entrepreneurs. Today, it's my honor to welcome not only an entrepreneur, but also a former chairman of the Houston Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. And he's going to talk to you more about some of the entrepreneurial things that he's involved with here in the region and internationally, bringing great partners to this great city. He's the managing director for Houston EB5, Roberto Contreras. Thank you so much, Roberto, for being here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Murillo.
I feel like I don't need the cards because we've worked together so long. I've worked with your family and have known them for decades now. And what a treasure you all are, collectively and individually. First, let me say that. In your work as the chairman of the chamber, a whirlwind. I told you you'll blink and the year will have come and gone. And it did, didn't it?
It sure did.
It did. So tell us a little bit about you first. I mean, you're married, you have children. Tell us about your college experience and how you arrived at all of this.
Okay, well, so I was born in Missouri City,
Okay.
which is just outside here in Houston. I grew up in Sugar Land, so I went to Colony Meadows Elementary,
Okay.
Went to Fort Settlement Middle School, and then I went to high school at Straight Jesuit. I loved my time at all of those schools.
Yes.
Sugar Land was a great place to grow up. Straight Jesuit was very formative for me. It really taught me a lot about social justice, and the slogan at Straight Jesuit is being a man for others, and that's really where I became aware of my responsibility to help others. The more that you're given, the more responsibility you have to give back.
And you've done that, and that's on the entry floor of the school. I remember seeing it when I've gone there, and you've stayed very involved with the family business, with EB5 in particular. For folks who are not aware of that, tell us what that is.
Well, first, let me just finish the last thought real quick.
Okay.
I did not want to be in the family business
That's
originally.
usually how this works.
And so,
Yeah.
I went to college at Swarthmore College, which is a small liberal arts school. Very different. It's a very very liberal school. So it was kind of like it kind of turned my world upside down from going from conservative Straight Jesuit to more liberal Swarthmore College, and it was that was also very formative in its own way.
Okay.
It kind of brought a lot of balance as well, and I guess in that regard, I knew that I wanted to get out of Texas, right? I wanted to kind of make a life on my own. So after graduating from Swarthmore, I then moved to China. I was in China for 5 years. And that's really where I was able to really kind of start to create my own legacy and really help the business in ways that it might have not really had, kind of grow the business in a way that I would not have been able to do had I come back to Houston,
Absolutely.
right? And so we were able to source a lot of capital, not just from China, but from Asia in general for our projects. And actually, it just so happens that one of our projects is here in the KHOU studio, and in the backdrop. So I thought that was intentional when I first walked in here, but I guess apparently it wasn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and let's talk about that. I mean, that's a big move, right, for you to leave the United States and go to China, not for a weekend or couple of weeks, school project. That's significant time. So you were immersed in the language, and you speak Mandarin. And
I do.
I have to imagine that all of this is just, as you said, as a businessman, just helped you understand different cultures and different ways of doing business. But what were some of the things you took away from that?
Well, it's obviously a very different culture. It's an ancient culture, and one that's been very well preserved through the people. And so I really learned to, their friendship is extremely important, right? And relationships are extremely important. Information is not as open and transparent. So that's sort of how you get your information and really understand the lay of the land, is through constantly networking and making friends. And the culture of being a friend with somebody is taken very, very seriously. The way that they host, the way that they give, it's a very giving culture. And so coming back here, when we have business partners from New York or from anywhere else that's not Asia, that they come in, or Mexico, or wherever it might be, and they come in town, I think that they're always a little surprised at the level at which we host now, right? Picking them up from the airport, taking them to meals. It's almost like we never leave their side, and that's something that we actually learned in Asia.
Sure.
So I'm really, really grateful for that. And I met my wife in Shanghai. She's American-born Taiwanese, but she was going to school at the time, and so that's where I met my wife. We moved back here. I got married pretty early, and I think that was very important for me, at least, to be able to focus. And it's been wonderful. She's also helped me grow a whole lot. And I think if you pick the right person, chances are that they're going to help you grow a whole lot. And so a lot of credit to my wife as well.
Well, that's awesome. You all have children as well, which is an exciting time for you.
Yes. It's I just dropped them off from school.
Yes.
So. Yes, it's a lot of joy having the children. We have 3 kids, so we have a 7-year-old, a 6-year-old, and a 5-year-old.
Well,
so
that's a lot of energy with 3 children, but you've made time, as was mentioned, not only for your family, your immediate family, business. The chamber took a lot of your time, but EB5 is an interesting concept, and this is one of the products of EB5. So let's tell the audience what that looks like.
Yeah, so we have a development business. It's called DC Partners, which I'm also the co-president of. And one of our one of the ways that we get projects up off the ground and finance is through the federal EB5 program. And so the EB5 program, it stands for Employment-Based Fifth Category. So there's EB 1 through 4, which are, EB it's a visa where basically you're getting a green card. For EB 1 through 4, you're getting a job in the United States or holding a specific kind of job for a certain amount of time. And so you're able to become eligible for a green card. EB 5 is really the only category where you're creating jobs for Americans. So you're getting a rewarded, basically a green card for having created jobs in the United States.
Understood.
And you have to make a minimum investment. Nowadays it's $800,000. And you create 10 jobs, in this case with us through construction. Of course you have to do it through a licensed business, which is Houston EB5. We're licensed by the federal government to do that.
Yes.
So you create the 10 jobs, in this case through construction, and you become eligible for a green card. So it's a great program because it's like a win-win-win program, right? For us, it provides a good cost of financing, so we're able to do sort of more ambitious projects. We like to do mixed-use developments, which we can get into later. Developments that really enrich the community. For the United States, it's fantastic because you're getting the investment, but you're also getting a really qualified immigrant family that's well educated, that has assets, that's making an investment here in the United States. And of course, for that family, it's a really easy route, despite the higher ticket amount of $800,000. it's a very smooth route to be able to gain permanent residency for you and your family.
So tell us specifically, what are some of those projects that have been created as a result?
Right, so well, we're looking at one right here. It just
Yeah.
so happens. In Chinese, that would be called, they call that yuan fen. They're big believers in fate, right? As
Okay.
fate would have it, right?
Okay.
So you always have to honor fate. That's
Yes.
another big one that I
Yes.
picked up over there, and so that this is one. Of course, we have the Thompson Hotel here in Houston. It's a big mixed-use development that's anchored by the Thompson Hotel. Condominiums, retail. We're about to start another phase with more condominiums and more retail and office. And we've done Arabella, Astoria. These are condominium projects. 4411, which is where Park House, the private club, is now.
Yes.
So just a handful of projects, but all urban infill. We're big believers in really trying to enrich the urban core here in Houston.
Yes.
Houston it's such a world-class city in almost all respects, and I say almost all respects, but it's a world-class city in terms of the talent that we have here. We're the oil and gas capital. We're the largest exporting port city in the United States. We have the largest medical center. We have great educational resources and institutions. But one thing that we feel, and I say we at DC Partners, we feel that the city is somewhat lacking is more sort of walkable mixed-use developments, more walkable areas. And that's something that holds the city back a little bit in terms of tourism, in terms of maybe attracting younger top talent to the city as well, and being able to attract some of the larger corporate relocations. They like to see some of those things, and that's something that the city still has a little ways to go on, and we try to play our small part in making it
Sure.
more vibrant in that regard.
Well, and speaking of, the Thompson has hosted our chamber for the Infrastructure Summit, the Data Summit, the Gala, etc. And it's a real treasure here in the Houston area, and to know that your family is behind this with a long legacy of entrepreneurship and commitment to this great city, and to have you had served as the chairman of our chamber is certainly important. So as we wrap up, what has that meant to your business and for you personally to serve as chairman?
Well, I don't know if you remember, but when you first, a year before I was chairman, I was on the board.
Yes.
And when you asked me to join the board, I got a little emotional. I don't know if you remember that.
do
It was actually 2
remember.
years before I joined the board.
I do remember.
And when it was 2 years before, I remember because I didn't join the board immediately. I joined a year after you had asked me, and I was like, oh no, I didn't make it on the board because I cried a little bit. And so it means the world, obviously, to have served as chairman of the Houston Hispanic Chamber. Houston, we talked about this the other day, right? We stand on business.
Yes.
Houston is a city that there's really, it's a very united city. When something might happen, right? When there might be some sort of political turbulence in the United States, and you see the division, and you see the rioting on the streets or whatever it might be, Houston actually always takes that as energy to come closer together.
Yes.
And to be reminded of what we're really here for. And what we're here for is to work hard, to grow our business, to take care of our families. We have good values as a city, and the Houston Hispanic Chamber is a really big part of that. Right, it's the Hispanic community is a big part of that, and the Houston Hispanic Chamber doing all that it does to help small businesses, to really help ensure that the American dream is safeguarded in the city of Houston, is something that we take very seriously as a family, as a company, and I think so as a city as well.
Well, Roberto, for all that you do and have done and will continue to do for our great city, we say thank you.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Murillo.
Thanks for joining us. We really appreciate you being with us here on the program, and we'll see you very soon. Thanks.